This is a murder mystery. Uh, yeah, even Midsummer Murders couldn't repeat this one. Wayne Druit was a bit of an entrepreneur, a bit of a Walter Mitty, nice guy, but always, I've got this going on, and so on. He was undertaking some diamond deal with an unknown person called the Facilitator. No one knew his identity. He wanted to keep his identity secret. So after 48 hours, he hadn't appeared. The car was found that night just outside the surveillance area of the Perth airport. Alarm bells are ringing straight away. These weird, crazy type of jobs where people would think only would happen on TV. They'd saw through the bars. 3 of them got through the window, across the roof. They had civilian clothes underneath. From there, they got on a bus, went and got a hamburger from Hungry Jack's, and then continued on their merry way. It was regarded as a high-risk job. And when we went into the flat, there he is. He's sitting in front of a TV. The TV's just running on static now. And there's a great big hole in his head. Everybody thought this was a murder. And then we, digging around, one of the informants said that, before he did a job, he played Russian roulette.
Well, we're back for part 2 of my chat with retired Detective Senior Sergeant Glen Potter from the WA Police. If you listened to part 1, you would have heard Glen give us a fascinating insight into the investigation and capture of Australia's most wanted escapee, Brendan Abbott. In part 2, we spoke about the investigation into the suspected murder of Wayne Druit, who was involved in an international diamond scam, which took unbelievable twists and turns. He also told us about a lunatic armed robber who'd like to play Russian roulette with himself and a loaded firearm after he robbed banks, and Glen's involvement as a negotiator in Australia's longest-running hostage situation. This is what I love about talking to real cops. They got stories that you just can't make up. Glen Potter, welcome back to part 2 of I Catch Killers.
Only part 2.
only part 2. Well, we got lost in the Brendan Abbott story. One thing I just want to jump straight into, because you were telling me it the other day when we're having a chat, a armed robber that had a propensity for playing Russian roulette, and
Yes.
how that story ended. Can you just tell the listeners what that was about and what happened?
Well, it actually came out of your state,
Yeah.
out of your
Don't
stick-up.
blame New South Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a phone call. I just picked up the phone. I think it was one afternoon, midweek, and as a detective said, "Look, we've got a fella here who's wanted. We suspect strongly has committed a murder of a fella and placed the body in a barrel. The body's been located,
Yep.
but we believe he's moved to WA and living under a false name, and gave us the false name details." Sounded like a great story. Let's get on to it. They told me that he was what we call a stick-up merchant. He liked to do armored cars. He would confront the cross pavement when they were bringing the money into the bank.
Yeah.
He'd stand there wearing hanging around in a singlet and shorts, thongs, carrying a plastic bag. In the plastic bag, a shopping bag, would be a gun. So he'd go up to him, say, "Pull the gun out, give us your guns, give us your money," and off he'd go. Like John Spiteri flip-flopping down the road out of Getting Square.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that movie.
how
Yeah.
that's how I viewed the guy. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, this is interesting. So within, I reckon, a couple of hours, we'd identified where he was staying. We just rang every real estate agent we could think of, and one of them came up, "Yeah, we've got him as a client living in a complex that I used to live in."
Yeah. Oh, that's
And
handy.
yeah, so it was a place called Tranby-on-Swan in Maylands, which is just a very close outer area of Perth, and actually very close to where our then police academy was. So we started to get the job together. We found out that he'd purchased a vehicle, um, and so we set up surveillance, and we ran surveillance for about, oh God, it would have been 3 weeks on this guy. And I've never seen anyone so systematic and methodical about doing reconnaissance on targets, doing counter surveillance, It made our surveillance guys' jobs extremely hard.
Yeah.
We had both surveillance vehicles, surveillance on foot, surveillance in the air. It was regarded as a high-risk job. We'd also had managed to put a tracker on the car. And so this was going on every day for hours upon hours upon hours of just counter surveillance, reconnaissance. Um, and we'd identified a number of targets. He'd even put a wig on at one stage and a hat and gone and sussed out a bank. Um, so we'd identified a number of targets. He'd gone every day for 3 weeks. Then one day he didn't appear. We thought, oh, he's having a rest day. So we just kept surveillance on. Um, Next day, still no appearance. And all of a sudden, the police vehicle turns up, a marked police vehicle. They go inside, they come out. Obviously, more vehicles turn up. And we thought, oh, God, what's happened here? And then we saw a major crime had turned up. So we presented ourselves and said, look, this is what we've been working on. And when we went into the flat, there he is. He's sitting in front of a TV. The TV is just running on static now. He's sitting there. He's got a gun in this hand. That hand's on top like that on his lap. And there's a great big hole in his head. And everybody thought this was a murder.
Yeah.
Made to look like a suicide because one hand was like that and the gun was underneath. But the pathologist told us very quickly that, a traumatic injury like that, hands are going to go up like that, and then they're going to come down. And there was nothing else to indicate that, we had surveillance in the place, so no one had gone in there. The only suspects apparently were us.
Yeah.
Because it was regarded as a death in custody.
Yeah, I could imagine that would have played out.
And then we digging around, and with New South Wales, one of the informants said that, before he did a job, he played Russian roulette.
Okay, for those that
And
don't...
there was only one round in the chamber.
Yeah.
So, he was definitely playing Russian roulette.
For those that don't understand what we're talking about with Russian roulette, I think it's pretty well known, but content warning, don't try this at home, but putting a one round in a revolver and spinning the revolver and putting the gun to your head. And so it sounds like he was a risk taker or whatever was going on. And
obviously, there was something going on there. This is either meant to happen or not.
Yeah.
Am I going to be lucky on the job? Well, he wasn't lucky.
Yeah.
But it was definitely Russian roulette. There was only one round in the chamber.
These are the type of bizarre things you come across in the police, isn't it? Like it's dangerous to make assumptions because there's so many times you see it, and factually it plays out that things take twists and turns.
Well, in the half hour we spoke to, and the couple of times we spoke before, just job after job just reappears in my memory. I mean, that's 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so these are happening all the time. These weird, crazy type of jobs where people would think only would happen on TV. They happen to us every day. And we put them in the memory bank, we file them away and never think about them until something sparks and thing, And so, I mean, just talking to you, I can just think of job after job, and I'm sure you can do the same. We should do a podcast with you.
Yeah, just jobs. Well, you talk about interpreting a crime scene. I remember it was a Friday afternoon, called to Wollongong for what had been called a murder. I was the on-call homicide team. Go down there, go into the house. There's a naked man, blood splattered all around the walls, finger marks, drags, and he's got a cord wrapped around his neck. It was an old plug-in landline. He still had a landline at his place. For all intents and purposes, this is a murder investigation, and so we set it up as a murder investigation, crime scene, and canvassing and everything that you need to do. And as that investigation played out following the post-mortem, he had a ruptured aorta, and the blood was him. He was trying to phone 000 to get urgent help. He was in that much pain. He was wrapping the cord around his neck, twisting around, just rolling around in pain. And the patterned blood marks of hands being dragged along the wall was him coughing up blood on his hands and falling down the wall. Now, You look at that scene and it was a horror scene for sure.
Yep.
That there's been a struggle here. There's a murder happened, and then when it's all dissected, when you look at it clinically on the facts that are presented, you see that it's not. So yeah, I think every cop carries these type of stories. Another investigation that you were heavily involved in, and I had a bit of a look at the. There's a couple of quite a bit written on it. The disappearance and suspected murder of Wayne Druit, and I was having a look at the coroner's findings that you sent down or sent over to me. Do you want to explain that investigation, your involvement, and what happened? Because again, that was something that was slightly unusual, but quite an interesting case.
This is a murder mystery.
Yeah.
Even Midsummer Murders couldn't repeat this one. So I was running the East Metropolitan District Detectives, which is Midland and the eastern suburbs of WA. It was a big area. I had about 70 staff, not just detectives, but family violence, intelligence, forensic, and so on. And I'd gone in one morning, and the uniform guys came up from downstairs and said, "Look, boss, we've been given this missing person. It's come over from Mirrabooka. Do you want to have a look at it?" So I had a look at it, and the initial information was that this fella called Wayne Druit, who was an ex-serviceman, had vanished two weeks before, and there'd been a delay in reporting him because he was undertaking some diamond deal with an unknown person called the Facilitator, and that now they wanted to report him. And there was all these people who had invested large amount of money and now were looking like losing it.
Yeah.
And alarm bells are ringing straight away. So we went to the first place we went to was actually one of the main investors, and got talking to them and found out the essence of they were willing to tell us about the deal. And a summary of the deal would be that Wayne Druit was a bit of an entrepreneur, a bit of a Walter Mitty, nice guy, but always, I've got this going on,
Look out
and
for
so
the
on.
urn.
He was in his late 50s. He'd retired from the army. He was a retired warrant officer. He was a clerical guy at the SAS, and was well liked by a lot of people. So he had approached all these investors with this deal of a lifetime, where diamonds would be imported into the country and there would be a 5 to 6 times profit on people's investment. He had to raise, ultimately, the figure kept going up, but ultimately he had to raise $1 million cash. Now, in the 90s, the early 2000s, $1 million
That's a lot of money.
was a lot of money. And it was being done through a guy who was called the Facilitator. No one knew his identity. He wanted to keep his identity secret, for whatever reasons, and that these diamonds would be brought in, they would be resold. He would take the $1 million, and everybody would get, 5 to 6 times their cash amount. An offer too good to be true, and yet it was probably too good to be true.
People still go for it, don't they?
Well, look, there were about 15 investors. Yeah. Some had put in like 150,000, 10,000, 40,000. And each of them was an individual character who had, if you were doing a murder mystery, an Agatha Christie, you'd sit them around in a lounge room and eventually one would cough to the murder. So we did a lot of digging. And what we found was the only contact we had with the Facilitator was a mobile phone. So there were 2 mobile phones. They were burner phones. One was in the name of J Love and the other one was in the name of Conti. Drewett had one and the Facilitator had the other. And this is how the deal was supposed to be done. And backtracking a bit, so Wayne and his wife was kept in the dark about it. And I think, like most wives, when husbands have this great idea, they just roll their eyes and go, okay, well, just don't lose the house over it. So he'd been booking into hotels at the time this deal was happening, and he'd got his wife in the hotel. And essentially that was to keep her away from the deal. So they were booked in the Rendezvous Hotel, and then he went back to his own house to do the deal.
Yeah.
And then he said it would take a couple of days. He might be gone for 24 hours, but don't worry, everything will be fine. And this is the same thing he had told the investors. So after 48 hours, he hadn't appeared. The wife had returned home and found that the house, that Wayne's office was still locked, that there were dishes left on the sink, and Wayne was apparently very fastidious,
Yeah.
and would put everything away. That the turntable that he loved was still running, which was unusual. And he was known to just wear pajamas around home. That's all he wore, and that's the only items of clothing were missing, and his car was missing.
Right.
So, um, and that went on for 2 weeks, and no one. All the investors kept going back to her and say she wanted to go to the police. No, 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 you'll ruin the diamond deal. Don't go back to the police. Don't, the deal's going to happen. They've got a vested interest. They've got all this money they foolishly tied up in it. They didn't want anything to happen.
Yeah.
Um, what we found out after, so the day we were told about this, we put it out on the media, and we put out that his car was missing. The car was found that night just outside the surveillance area of the Perth airport, parked on the side of the road. Clearly made to look like,
He
you know,
skipped.
he's gone.
Yeah.
He's gone with the money. He's got his briefcase in his pajamas and off he's
Yeah.
gone. Um, we didn't obviously buy that. So we kept digging around. Once we got the report, we started interviewing people. We found out about these two phones. We still didn't know the identity of the facilitator. We did know from one of them that there was a large safe deposit box at the Bankwest Tower in Perth in their underground area, which was when it was last seen was stacked with money.
Yeah.
Obviously, we went to have a look at that. There was no money in it. We also um, found that the person who showed us that one had a key to it, so he's suddenly becoming prime suspect.
Yep.
He denied any involved in it. And we'd also found out that he'd also taken out another safe deposit box near it.
Right.
So yeah, we were seriously looking at him. Um,
Understandably.
and of course, then we were going through the phone records, and the phone records were just between the two mobile phones, except for one 19-second phone call to a house. And I mean, alarm bells ringing. Someone's cocked up here.
Yeah.
Someone's broken the procedure and rung the house by accident, regretted it, hung up.
Yeah.
So we did a check on the house, and we came up with a guy by the name of Nicholas Stewart who lived there. So we got warrants, and we raided the house, and we came across a woman who claimed to be the wife of Nicholas Stewart. She was a Romanian national, as he was. His real name was Nikolai Stoyan.
Yeah.
Um, and so we kept searching the house. And I remember looking on the concrete, the garage floor, and I thought, this doesn't look right. This looks freshly laid. There was no trap door or anything, but this looks freshly laid. So we got ground penetrating radar in there thinking, are we going to find a body under here? And sure enough, there was a cavity under that floor.
Mm.
So out come the jackhammers, jacking away, thinking we're going to find a body. We break through and we find an underground bunker. And in this bunker were a stash of guns, silencers, pistols, garrots, books on how to dispose of bodies, books on how to carry out hijackings of aircraft, all sorts of stuff. It was a treasure trove.
And was that just sealed in the?
Sealed in.
Okay,
Sealed
so it
in.
was there
So
for if I needed it. That's where no one's going to
yeah,
find it. Yeah, well, that
yep.
was a good pickup.
And the wife had told us that Nick had recently flown to Romania because his mother was sick.
Mm.
So obviously we're trying to get in contact with the Romanian authorities. The Romanian authorities are kind of, yeah, do you really want to know him? And so on. And didn't get anywhere. And then we did a lot of media on it.
Yep.
And we found a photograph of Nicholas Stewart in a jacuzzi, toasting him with a glass, looking very happy and confident. And the media loved that.
Mm.
So we told him what we knew at the time, which was he was believed to be a Romanian national, that he'd had experience in special forces, possibly a member of the Foreign Legion, which we'd been told. So we juiced it up a bit to get the interest.
Yep.
Um, snippets came back. Various people came forward and said, "Oh, we know him through, he sold his car through a dealer. The car had been detailed twice. There was nothing in that. That he'd sold all his tools from his brick paving business." We learnt more about Nick Stewart. He'd been in prison for shooting a neighbour who was pissing him off.
Right.
Um, so he was a pretty bad guy.
Well,
Um,
and what you found in his place is,
yeah,
I don't want to tell you how to do your job, Glenn, but a bit of an indicator you might be onto
it
something
is.
there.
Yes, and of course, if you've ever dealt Romanians,
Mm,
especially who operate in the criminal world, they are hard.
yeah,
And word had been he'd been a bodyguard at some stage to the former ruler of Romania, Ceausescu.
yeah, okay,
So and those people had done things for Ceausescu that you wouldn't want to talk about. So then we get contact from the Romanian authorities saying, we want Mr. Stewart because he's done. Oh, by the way, before we got to that, we'd also found that the bought tickets to fly to Romania with the return ticket not long after the disappearance.
okay, yeah,
And he'd also been trying to take large amounts of money out of the country and actually tried to send some money out of the country, which got picked up like $60,000 in a cardboard box.
yeah,
So he had to go back and pick it up. So we knew that cash was flying around. So I get this call from the Romanian authorities, and they say, we want him because about 4 years earlier, maybe 5 years earlier, he's the prime suspect for the murder of a guy who was getting cash together for a diamond deal.
right, okay,
Oh, but what a gift. But we're not going to extradite him because we don't extradite, but you can come here and try him for his crimes.
very good,
DPP weren't going to have that.
yeah,
They're not going to go to an Eastern European country at the time that was trying to get entry into the EU to try him over there on their thing. So extradition was becoming a problem. At the same time, with all this going on, Major Crime was still telling us he's just a missing person who's taken off with the money.
yeah,
Yeah, because they had competing things. That was still a possibility. They were in cahoots,
yeah,
but you need more than $1 million even then to not have cut all contact with your family, not use your credit cards. By the way, Wayne had a heart condition that he needed daily medicine. We went back and some stage we'd gotten into his office and we'd found Wayne's office and we found the hard drive had been ripped from his computer and all his medications were there. So that
yeah,
was another indicator. So we were kind of stumped. What are we going to do now? We'd interviewed all the witnesses. We'd pretty well ruled out other people because we'd found out that Stewart had opened a safe deposit box immediately below the one that had the cash
yeah, yeah,
and had accessed it on of the day that Drewett disappeared. So obviously cash had been put into the other one, then into a bag, and off he goes. So we're stymied.
And at a guess, I would imagine from above, levels above yourself in the force, there wouldn't be a great deal of interest in it. I wish these guys had stopped following up this case. We don't need it. We
Well,
don't.
here's a funny story.
Yeah,
I then went, I was told I had to go and do a PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint, but a
yeah,
PowerPoint presentation to the Deputy Commissioner because all this,
yeah.
this controversy and money being spent and so on. I realized I was on a no winner when he fell asleep halfway through the PowerPoint and just kept asking questions. Well, why? Why are you doing that? Why are we chasing this? And I just thought, I'm on a loser here.
I
Give
think,
up while you can.
Glenn, you say I might trigger stuff. You've just triggered. I think so many times I've done those PowerPoint presentations. Please explain why we're doing this, and you just get these negative questions the
Yep.
whole time. So
It
I
was awful.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think most working police have been in that situation, trying to keep a job running that needs to keep going.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's not going.
yeah,
So I decided I'd try another tack. And through my media contacts, I contacted Stephen Rice, a producer out of 60 Minutes.
yep.
I
No,
told him the
Stephen.
story and
Yep.
said, this is great. And I said, if I could get some media interest over and get 60 Minutes to do a story, then who knows?
Yeah.
So from memory, I think a crew went over to Romania,
Yeah.
and then got quickly turned around and sent home. And then not long after that, I was actually at the National Finals Radio in Tamworth, and I was just doing some practice or whatever before the rodeo, and I got a phone call, um, and it was through an interpreter from the Bucharest Criminal Investigation Division
Yep.
head, and essentially the phone call was, "Do not send media over here. We don't like the media. If they come over again, they won't be leaving. And by the way, don't you come either."
Okay.
I go, okay, if you say so. So that was a very
Bit of
yeah.
a warning coming down there.
I passed that information on, and then I eventually spoke to I think it was a UK deputy or assistant commissioner
Mm.
who was a liaison officer for the Romanian authorities in there, building up their law enforcement for arrival into the EU.
Yeah.
And I told him the story. He said, "You have to understand that $1 million, which is about 700,000 US,
Yeah.
a top level engineer in Romania at the moment earns about $100 a month
Okay. So it puts
in
it in
Romania.
perspective what we're.
With what you've got, what the money he's got, he could pay anyone and everything off."
Yeah.
And he said at that time it was so corrupt.
Yeah.
He said, "Don't go, just don't go."
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
So the last thing I did was it kind of died there.
Mm.
I wrapped it all up, sent it off to major crime, um, and then of course the coroner. Eventually, the family kept pushing for a coroner's hearing because no one was going to decree he was dead,
Yeah.
which means the wife wasn't getting her benefits from the army, and it was a terrible situation for the family, and they didn't have any closure on it. So I got told I had to do it as a coroner's report. By this stage, I'm running the mounted section.
Yeah.
So off I go to major crimes, sitting there, go through the boxes and boxes of stuff. Fortunately, I had a couple of good detectives with me who'd worked with me previously, and we went through and we did the coroner's report. That then got coroner's hearing. We went to the coroner's hearing. The outcome was yes, this was a murder,
Yeah.
that Stewart was the murderer, because, and this is an important detail I may have skimmed over, at the time that he left to fly out of the country, he went to an address in Coolbellup, which is really south of Perth and a
Yeah.
long way from the airport, um, and dropped some gear off, then vanished for 8 hours, then came back. That was the day after Druid had gone missing.
Right.
The his excuse to the person who we eventually interviewed is that his house in Ballajura, which is 10 minutes from the airport, was too far away, and that Coolbellup, which was an hour away from the airport, was closer.
Right. Doesn't
I
add up.
suspected strongly that he's got the body in the boot of the car and
Yeah.
he's driven between maybe 4 hours somewhere and dumped the body. And once you get out, you go east, you get out into those areas, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You get out into the goldfields, chance of finding a body
Plenty
are
of
almost
places. Plenty of
zero.
places you
Yep.
could dump it. Yeah.
And bodies don't last long out there.
Yeah.
Um, and the rumor about pigs eating bodies is absolutely true.
Mm.
Um, so, so that was that window we think the body was disposed of.
Yeah.
So coroner said, yes, this is a homicide. Yes, there is significant circumstantial evidence to implicate Nick Stewart,
Yeah.
and that it should go to the DPP for them to consider an indictment. Went to
Right.
the DPP. They looked at it and said there is no reasonable prospects of getting him out of the country
Yeah.
because he's extradited there. If he comes back to Australia, we'll look at it then.
It's frustrating, but I think the fact that you got it to the inquest, and I'm looking at the coroner's conclusions and the things that she said, and that for those reasons, I've concluded that Mr. Stewart contributed to the death of Mr. Druitt. So, yeah, at least it gives the family some. The closure's not the right word, but some answers to what's gone on that's been presented. It's frustrating as it is, but yeah, the twists and turns. I've used that ground searching radar for cavities under concrete slabs and all that. We didn't find anything, and I've always wondered how well they worked. Did it come up when you were
Yes,
searching that?
it,
It showed the void.
down to the millimeter in
Yeah,
size.
yeah, yeah,
So it does work. But this was a void
yeah.
as opposed to a body buried So what the radar does is it gives you indications of density.
Yeah.
And so, the guys who do it know how to read whether there's a body buried.
At the time I used it, it was a tactical thing in the middle of the night, in the middle of the bush, creeping in and using it, and we didn't get the reads that we'd hoped for. But it's something, how you have things that just niggle in the back of your mind, wondering if there is that cavity in that place that we searched that we didn't pick up on. Negotiating.
Yes.
You told me snippets of it. I didn't get the full details, but with negotiating, the one that was you referenced it as probably Australia's longest hostage negotiation. Tell us through that. I can't do justice even describing how it played out. Tell us what happened there and what your role in it was.
Well, I was a negotiator and on call at the time. I was working in armed robbery.
Yep.
And I'd gotten home that night and I got a phone call saying, or pager went off, found out. They said, we've got this situation at the Shenton Park Rehabilitation Hospital. We've got a woman who's being held hostage by a guy, her ex-boyfriend, and that she's a critical patient in that she's in a halo and somehow he's endangered her life. So my offsider and I, Andrew Martin, we go to the hospital.
Sorry, Glenn, I just interrupt there because that when we're talking the halo, we're talking where the neck's secured,
bolted into the skull,
the skull to support obviously something wrong with the spine or the neck.
She'd had a car accident.
Yep.
And she'd have broken a neck.
Okay.
And so they had to stabilize the neck, and it was such a mess that if the neck had been manipulated, it could kill her.
Right.
So we had been given limited information. So in our normal ways of doing things, we attended the hospital. We got a brief from the coppers who were there at the time. The tactical response group turned up. And so Andrew and I formed a strategy. And what we were going to do is we're going to take the first shift of 12 hours, which ended up being 14 hours to debrief the day shift who'd come in. We never expected it to go very long. But what confronted us when we were in the room was something you couldn't make up. So here we have a guy who shaved every hair in his body off. He was I think he was a Serbian fellow in his mid to late 20s, had been a drug user, looked really fit, sinewy, but had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He'd been the ex-boyfriend of this girl, and they had broken up.
Yep.
So he'd had turned up at the hospital wanting to visit her. Security guards, looking at him go, what the? She didn't want to see him, but he'd gone in there, started talking to her, and then took off his jumper, tied it around through a halo and tightly around his waist. So he's standing at the top of the bed like that, and it's tied around his waist. And any movement of that could have killed her.
Yeah.
So we get the brief from the surgeons. They said, look, this is really bad. This could kill her. Her neck is that unstable. She was quite a wild cat and was, verbally being very angry with him and screaming at him and telling him to get out and calling him names. He was going through a schizophrenic episode that was slowly building. So we went into the room, Andy and I. So it's just a single room by themselves. And we're not far away from him. I think we had one chair we were sitting on and the other one would be standing and we'd take turns. Outside the door, we had the what do we call the emergency action team?
Yep.
The EA team, and they were outside ready to come in and pounce if the opportunity came up.
Yep.
So my initial thinking, well, he's not going to last this long. We're probably going to have to physically take him out, but we'll try talking to him. So we started the negotiations, and these negotiations were intense. And through that first 12-hour shift, by that shift, he'd taken all his clothes off. She was abusing him. She was abusing us for not doing anything. Trying to negotiate someone who's steadily increasing a schizophrenic episode. We'd managed to get him some water, but he didn't want food. And we're probably by this stage 10 hours into it. And
at all the time he's got the jumper tied to the halo tied,
and he's standing next to her.
Yeah.
So 10 hours into it, we're starting to, we know we've got to keep talking. We've got him talking, but his behavior is becoming more bizarre. He's thinking he's Jesus.
Yep.
Um, he started flicking feces at us. He'd wipe his ass and flick it at us and this
Mm.
type of thing. So it was getting very unpleasant. The whole time we're just trying to keep it calm, keep it calm, keep it calm. By this stage, a whole group of support had come in, psychiatrists, psychologists, and so on. So they're now on this when we're becoming a more organised team. We've got a negotiation coordinator who's dealing with the tactical coordinator who's dealing with us. And we're getting all this advice. So we then go into the next. So, okay, next shift comes in, we come out, they go through the day going through exactly the same.
Yep.
He's still standing there, still naked. They're still talking. He's not eating.
Yep.
She's getting angry, then calming down, and so on. So we couldn't believe it when we were told we're coming back in. So we're coming back for the next shift. That was another night shift. And we went through the whole box and dice
Mm.
again for 14 hours. Negotiation was getting us somewhere. We were talking to him. Um, but we were getting a lot of interference from the psychiatrist who kept dragging us out, one of us out, talking to us. And at the end of, I think, 12 hours, the psychiatrist called me out and said, "You're completely fucking this up. This is
Yeah.
bad." I mean, my my morale just went.
Yeah. It's
And
like,
I did. I had what
yeah.
I'm doing. I didn't get any specifics of what I was doing, but I was being too assertive or not enough assertive or
Yeah.
whatever.
It's a fine
Um,
line.
we, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I just thinking, I'd like to see you in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, they said, we're replacing you. We're bringing a woman in on the team. And I said, no offense. He clearly has no respect for women whatsoever.
Yeah.
I know your female negotiator. She is very, very good, but it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It is not going to work and it's going to go badly. Nah, absolutely. We're doing this way. You go home. We won't see you again. Just go back to what you're normally doing. You fucked this up. And so I dragged myself out of there, got in the car, went
Would
home.
have been
I
feeling
think
good
I,
about
I
yourself.
think I had a couple of
Yeah.
beers. This was around about 5 in the morning. Thought, well, I'm going to try and get some sleep.
Yeah.
At about 10 o'clock that morning, I get a phone call. Get yourself back in here. It's not worked. It's really gone to shit. Oh,
Duh.
yeah, duh. But I'm still feeling like, I'm feeling pretty bad about this. So Andrew and I went back in there. But we spoke before we were again and said, we can't go, this can't go on much longer. We're
Yeah.
getting, 40 hours or 45 hours we've been going, whatever it is,
Yeah.
crazy time. I said, we've got to have a plan. The plan is not going to be negotiation. We
Yeah.
might get him to free up something, but we're not going to get him. So our plan was that I would, because had a reasonably good rapport with her,
Yeah.
um, I would play if we made a move, I would place myself over the top of her and hold
Hold that.
the body
Yeah.
and keep the halo protected,
Yeah.
while Andy would just go in there and King hit him as hard as he could
Yeah.
to drop him, giving time for the reaction team to go in there.
Yeah.
We didn't tell anybody else this plan because we knew what the reaction was going to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we talked him out of it, great.
Yeah.
So we're in there, we're going for about 5 or 6 hours. It's not going well. He's throwing shit at us, throwing food,
Yeah.
nothing he'd eaten. Um, he's off the charts with his craziness. And then we got a moment of clarity.
Yeah.
It just came out of the blue. It was really weird. And I haven't got it anymore, but there used to be a recording right up to the moment things escalated to
Yeah.
a point. And so I looked at Andy, Andy looked at me. They could see it was escalating outside and they're trying to call us out. And I'm going, we're not coming out. We're not coming out. We are at critical response, and I've got little heads coming around the corner of the door saying, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
No, we're not coming out. And so there was nothing they could do about that. And then all of a sudden we saw the jumper loosen.
Yeah.
And I must have said something like, that must be really uncomfortable, mate.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable. Loosen it off a bit and we can keep talking. Everything's going to be okay, blah, blah, as you do. Because negotiation is about creating relationships,
Yep.
about creating control. It's about listening. So we got into the stage where he had loosened off his jumper and it was starting to fall away. And I looked at Andy out of the corner of my eye. He looked at me and I just said, go. and I threw myself on top of her,
Yeah.
locked her down,
Yeah.
and Andy just came in and just hit him a ripper. It didn't drop him, but it stunned him.
Yeah.
The TRG guys came charging in. There was 6 or 8 of them.
Yeah.
He fought like crazy, absolute crazy.
That's it.
Um,
Yeah.
Took ages to subdue him. They eventually got him at handcuffs at 53 hours. This had gone on. He'd been standing there for 53 hours.
Yeah.
She was obviously a mess.
Yeah.
Um, I was utterly exhausted and exhilarated.
Yeah.
I remember I didn't smoke. I remember going outside afterwards with no debrief,
Yeah.
and I must have chuffed a couple of cigarettes down. I was looking, searching, has anyone got a beer? I was just completely,
Yeah. I
utterly
can.
drained, and yet elated and feeling like I'd been vindicated.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the pressure, isn't it? Like when it comes off, you mightn't even got a pat on the back. They might have said, "Well, you shouldn't have done that," but you won't get crucified. But if it went wrong there,
Oh
you've got
yeah,
to
we were
you've got to
goners.
make a judgment call. If it went wrong there, they would have had you, yeah, had your head
Yeah,
for it.
and there were people who, and we were well aware of this,
Yeah.
but I mean, we'd been in there so long,
Mm.
we'd been through it. I think both Andy and I were willing to make that.
Yeah.
We thought it was a worthwhile risk.
Yeah.
It was calculated. We had positioned ourselves. Um, we were fairly confident we were going to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, it was not a happy um, psychiatrist at the end of it. We were commended.
Mm.
There was a group commendation for everybody
Yeah.
involved. It just wasn't any individuals. Um, the newspaper ran a front page on it, and I remember reading and said, these guys should get a raise. I thought, yeah,
Yeah.
never happened. Never happened. There was no raise.
Right.
But just the fact that we got the job done.
Well,
And
that is policing at its core, and that's the sharp end when you're negotiating a situation like that. But sometimes you've got to make judgment calls, and very often you're doing it without a safety net. You know if
yeah,
it goes bad, and we've all had times. If you're a working cop, you're going to make a judgment call on the spot that you know is going to get dissected months, maybe years down the track by legal people getting paid a shitload of money
yep.
to question why did you do this at the time.
Why
But
did you do that? Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. I mean, and I'm sure you would have heard the same thing. If you're not getting in the shit every now and then, you're not doing your job.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You
I
know?
think policing is a robust sport, and well, it's not a sport; it's for real. And you've got to take those risks, calculated risks, stay within the rules. But I have an issue with leadership in the police that don't support people that like in that situation, you were doing your best. It worked out, but if it went bad, there would be a lot of bosses, I would imagine, that would abandon you completely and leave you on your own. I always said it when I was in a supervisory role, if you make a mistake when you're trying to do something, I will support you. If you make a
Yeah.
mistake out of laziness or something worse, I'm not going to support you, but I'll give you
No.
100% support because every cop that learns their trade, you make mistakes all the way along, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in there. So I think we struggle in this country, not just New South Wales, but across the country, getting people in policing. It's a very rewarding position, but it can be also unforgiving if you haven't got the support of the organisation. And I think that comes down to leadership. That's my view. What's your
Mm.
thoughts?
Oh, look, exactly. I mean, leadership has always been a problem in policing. I mean, I made a choice not to go any further than senior sergeant.
Yep.
I liked too much being on the front line. And while I was physically able to do it, that's where I wanted to be. I joined the police not to, it was never about the money.
Yep.
And it was never about being, a morally person who wanted to go and save the community. It was always about, it was exciting.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to stick to the excitement of it and stay on the front line. But I saw people go up the ladder whose motivation was
Mm.
not about leadership or leading people. It was about their progression,
Yep.
um, often overstating their ability at that level to make decisions that were defensible.
Yep.
And when things go wrong, it all came down.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that you and I have had our tough times in the job,
Yeah.
and that you look at those and you learn by them. Many of them not your doing,
Mm.
but I think, and from your history, I think that the two types of detectives. There is the very fastidious, dot the I, cross the T, very slow but methodical. And then there's the dynamic. Let's have a good crack. Let's have a,
Yeah,
yeah, we're not breaking the rules,
yeah,
but certainly we're pushing them to the limits to be able to get the
yeah.
job done and get it done effectively and efficiently.
Mm.
And I think those two detectives are very good for jobs.
Yeah,
The one in between, who's all they're only interested in, and this is a police
I,
officer around,
yeah.
is their rise up to the powers and who they can step on when they can get there.
I haven't heard it broken up that way, and I agree. Even with the two extremes, you quite often it's good to have those type of detectives on the same
You
strike
need
force,
them.
and you
Yeah,
get that good balance. I say with policing, yeah, you're a public servant first and foremost. You're there to serve the public, and what I don't like about leadership, and I've worked under some great leaders, so it's not an
me
across the
too.
board spray. I've been inspired by some really really good leaders, but the ones I didn't have respect for is the ones that, what can I take from this organisation? How can I get promoted? How can I keep myself without getting into trouble? How do I not have the pressure of the situation you just described, or when I'm going to court or at a murder scene? They avoid all that, but they want to take all the cream from the top and just keep rising. And they're the ones that I think cause problems for the working police, the junior police underneath them. So,
I agree. And I think those are the ones who, when they rise up these ladders,
mm,
seem to think they know everything about everything purely by the fact that they've risen up, when their knowledge is so limited, and see anyone who has expertise in a field
yeah,
as a risk to them,
yeah,
and don't take that advice and actually work against it. It's very common in policing. I'm sure every organisation had these problems.
yeah,
Leadership in policing is difficult because we don't train people for leadership.
yeah,
You either learn it on the job or you don't learn it,
mm,
and yet you can still rise. And I think sometimes the military have it over us, and they have a college that teaches, and they don't get it right,
yeah,
but their leaders are at least trained in leadership.
yeah.
We don't do that. We don't
Yeah,
do it very well.
I think it is something that's the failing in police, but the using the analogy between the military and policing, yes, we could spend some more time on developing good leaders, and yeah, not just rewarding people that have decided to take the leadership line, like operational police officers need to be supported so they can further their careers if they want to. You say you stopped at senior sergeant. I stopped at chief inspector, but I think in the difference of the states, the senior sergeant is probably the equivalent of the inspector in New South Wales. So I know what you're talking about. If I
Mm,
went any further, I wouldn't be hands on. I wouldn't be able to get involved in the
yep.
operations like I wanted to. Um, we're running out of time because you got such great stories. But for a cowboy as you call yourself, tell us about the worst injury you've had in the police. Now you've worked in tactical, you've been in some tough situations and heavy arrests and all that. Okay, cowboy, what's the worst injury you've had in the police? And I shouldn't be laughing because it was a bad
Uh,
injury.
it was a bad injury, but it has some funny sides.
Yeah,
I So I was running the matters section. We were preparing for CHOGM, which is the Commonwealth Heads of Government
yeah,
meeting here. And that was about 2011. And so they were expecting a lot of public order.
yeah,
There were issues going on and a lot of protests. So we had to maintain a high level of public order. And we at the time had a very, very public order orientated matter section. And I think it was the second biggest in the country at the time. We were numbering about 30 riders,
yeah,
horses. We were certainly in competition with New South Wales Police, who were the biggest. And I had a lot to do with New South Wales Mounted.
yeah,
Um, so we were training for at the showgrounds, and we had we're doing public orders. So when you get a line of horses going to doing public orders, so you got a line of coppers in front of you,
mm,
lined with their shields, their batons, or whatever, and then there's a line of horses behind. When you want to move a crowd with speed and assertiveness, they do what's called break for mounted. So when they break for mounted, the two lines of cops split and go out wide. The mounted section comes through and passes them either probably at a canter, so with some
yeah,
speed. They stop, say, 10 meters further ahead.
yeah,
The coppers run around in a big circle and line up behind the horses. Well, I was on a younger horse that was having problems. And when you do that, sometimes you got to remove them from things like the line to reduce the
Yeah.
stress. So I had moved this horse behind the line. So it's probably about 5-10 meters behind the line, taking it away from that initial stress because missiles and training were being thrown at us and this type
Yeah.
of thing. Um, it was a mistake on my part. So I'm on this horse. It's a little bit edgy, but I'm working. It's a big horse, trying to calm it down. And then when the break with mountain had happened, I wanted to move the horse up a little slower, just calmly behind, just to keep the horse going. What I didn't account for was all these foot coppers, about 30 of them, running around back towards me with shields and everything. This horse just saw this and thought, it's going
Speed
to
it.
die. So, and I was spurring at the time because it froze, and I
Yeah.
gave a bit of spur for it to go forward. It didn't go forward, so I gave it a little bit extra spur, and then this line came running in. The horse reared up and then bolted and just run blindly
Yeah.
at a full gallop into the back of the line of the horses and hit the back of the horses like hitting a brick wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
That caused me to hit the front of the saddle because on the front of our saddles we had what's called a swell, which is a hard piece of wood where
Yeah.
your stuff's attached to it. That the pain from that was just couldn't believe it. It was just like, oh my God. And then the horse started pushing in between two horses
Oh.
and was tearing my legs apart. And the last thing I remember before I blacked out and thought, I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
And this is just
Ripped
that
apart.
I had one leg up in the air, another leg in the stirrup, and I'm going down the side. And I
Oh.
was unconscious before I hit the ground.
Yeah.
And apparently I was dragged for some distance before my foot came out of the stirrup, and then the horse just took off. And
Yeah.
the horse was chased out of the showground through Claremont CBD
Yeah.
until they eventually got it. It just had completely freaked. I came to on the ground. I couldn't move. Um, the ambulance turned up. I couldn't remember where I
Yeah.
was, who I was, what I was doing initially. And they put me on the stretcher. The ambulance officers then put me on the board to put me on the stretcher, and they dropped me. Uh, so I
Sorry, I
passed
shouldn't
out
be
again.
laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm
Oh,
laughing
don't
at
worry.
it.
All my mates are taking
Yeah.
photographs and thinking this is hilarious. The coppers are cruel as,
Yeah.
which is great. So anyway, they eventually get me into the hospital. They're cutting all my gear off. They put me in a machine and found out what I had called a open book fracture to the pelvis.
Oh.
And what that is, it's usually a motorcycle injury where
Yeah.
motorcycles hit something. They hit the front of the handlebars. It splits the pelvis into
Yeah.
two, opens it up, and normally you die from it
Yeah.
because the force tears the femoral arteries.
Yeah.
But because this was a slow and painful, it had slowly, the arteries had stretched, and
Yeah.
then when I hit the ground, they'd come back together. That resulted in a plate being inserted and 8 weeks in hospital and quite a few months of rehabilitation, wheelchair, walking, swimming. Um, but that happened in May. By October, I was back in the saddle at work. Just because I
That's.
just wanted to do this. This is,
I
this
knew
was my
you. I.
baby.
I knew you cowboys were tough. I knew it.
And my first rodeo was Boddington Rodeo after that, and
Yeah.
that was in first week of, sorry, the first week of November. And I realized that I'd probably pushed it too far
Yeah.
because that really hurt. So I took a bit longer getting back into the, look, it wasn't my only injury.
Yeah.
I've been injured before. If you ride horses as much as I do, which is every
Yeah.
day nearly, you train young horses, they're going to get you sometime. I've had broken ankle, broken leg, broken fractured neck they didn't know about. But I used to climb before that,
Yeah.
and I had a climbing accident and fractured a
Like
vertebra. So
rock climbing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you live life on the edge.
Look, I
Calculate
don't call it
calculated edge.
or uncalculated, but
Yeah. Yeah.
look at, and I retired at 60.
Yeah.
The reason being is that I didn't fit to the organization anymore. I still
Yeah.
love the job, loved every minute of it, but I decided I wanted my days to be my days and do what I want.
Yeah.
And I was working in the film industry. I'd already done a feature film bringing horses to film,
Yep.
um, which was a really great experience. I was being used as a technical advisor on various feature films, one called
If
Hounds of Love,
yeah,
which,
name some of them because I saw on your
well,
resume there's quite a few.
Hounds of Love is loosely based on a serial killer of the 80s in Perth,
Yep.
very loosely. Stars Stephen Curry.
Yep.
and Susie Porter, who both got awards out of it. I can never see Stephen Curry again as Dale from The Castle because such a sinister character in this film.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I think it's a masterpiece. I never want to see it again. But if you see it once, it is an
Uh,
absolute masterpiece. Written and directed by a young director at the time called Ben Young,
Yep.
who became the director and also my part of our team of three of us for getting the series run and
Yep.
the postcard bandit off the ground. Um, so that was a real step into technical advising. I've done some since, whether it's on policing, script advising, or um, or actually being the oldest tactical operator. Fortunately, we have balaclavas in a series,
Cover it up.
um, doing all that
But
fun
that
stuff.
I look, I've worked a bit in the media since I've left the cops too, and I like the creative side. Like in the police, if I won't say I'm a creative type, but if you like to think outside the square a little bit, you
Yeah,
get reined in because it's a lot of concrete thinking. And in the film and television industry, the media, you meet these creative types, and some are right out there, but others I get quite inspired from the
yeah, and
the
look,
energy
it's also
the energy that they bring.
they do. I mean, I think it's a cutthroat business at the
Yeah,
corporate level, but on set with a crew, working with people, it's such a collegial. It's so familiar. The
it
hierarchy and
yeah
everything is just familiar to me. And so I find it very easy to work in. I have some of the same problems I've had. I might have conflict with someone
yeah
who's making decisions that I don't quite agree with. But I take the view, no one's going to die during this. There's no risk to life and death.
yeah yeah
Let's just move on.
yeah. The pressure's not there, but I do understand when you're with a team, if you're away filming with sound man, the team, producer, whatever, you've got that feeling like when you're investigating crimes as a team.
Yeah,
So I
you're
enjoy
just
that.
back into that collegial
Yeah.
teamwork.
Yeah, and also, and we were talking the other day when we're just having a chat. I like speaking to cops that look back at their career, and it has its highs and lows. But you look back and enjoy every day that you were there, and you're fortunate enough to work in that area.
And as we sit here, I think there's so many other stories I could have told.
Yeah,
And I know you're in the same
yeah,
thing. Um, I'll leave those for other people to tell because I don't want to take all the limelight.
okay,
But look, there are other things that happen through our careers that are both good and bad. I think the biggest thing for coppers, and I hope it's still happening, is learning resilience.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I remember a sign or a picture on the wall when I was going through the academy in the 70s, and I always stuck with me. Learn to create a thick hide because you're going to need it.
yeah, yeah,
And I never took policing personally.
mm,
If crooks did what they did, I did what I did. And if they beat me, oh well,
yeah,
let's move on to the next one. If they didn't beat me, as long as it was never personal,
yeah,
I found it okay. And I get him back to Brendan Abbott. It was never personal.
yeah, yeah,
You know, uh, I see him as just a criminal at his time of offending. There was a degree of respect because you knew you were up against a real adversary who was going to really challenge you.
mm,
And he was always one step ahead because he was the one who's making the moves. We were reacting to him. So we
yeah,
had to become more strategic and set the stage for him to react in a way that we expected him
mm.
to. So, that's always made me somewhat respectful of it.
I'll finish on this with the West. First, I was very junior detective. Just come into the armed hold-up squad, early 90s, and there was some Western Australian police that came over. I'm not sure what job it was on, but I know what it involved, and there was a lot of drinking. And the last I saw of the Western Australian detectives, and it was in a busy intersection, one was on the roof of a taxi and driving through the intersection. I don't know what happened to that that person. I'm sure there's a
I,
statute of limitations in place, so we're not getting anyone into trouble. But that was the last I saw of that
yeah,
WA detective. So
you know, it's that was the old crew.
yeah, yeah.
They worked hard, played hard. I like to think we worked hard, played hard, but I think they were the experts at it. They
Well,
were,
that was my introduction, day one of the armed hold up squad. We work hard, we play hard, and
yeah.
yeah, they were. I'm glad I got to experience it. The different times, but yeah.
I don't think it'll ever be experienced again, and
Oh,
that's
it
both good
can't
and
be,
bad.
and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It,
No.
it shouldn't be. But yeah, there were some benefits from it. There was some good aspects of the culture, and it was just different times. It's a different world now, but isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I think the other thing I'd like to leave on in the fact that I I don't really maintain my policing world is a memory now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got as a post retirement, I've got a whole new different world. And that's not a criticism of the policing world, but
No.
it's just you have to move on. And I've
I
always had that view.
I think that's healthy. My
Yeah.
world is very much not revolving around staying in contact with police. I've got some good friends that we catch up, but I've moved on, and I'm sort of investing my energy into what I'm doing now more so than hanging on to the policing days. And I think that's good, and I think it helps that transition from being a police officer to finding another interest and put your passion in there.
Yeah. Look, I agree. And I think good on you for what you're doing. Um, I don't tend to listen to podcasts, but now I'm going to have to. My
You can.
daughter listens to your podcast, by
Oh,
the way.
good. Well, you should listen to your daughter more often. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
I should.
Well, Glenn, thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Love the stories. Love having a chat with you, and keep up the good work.
Yeah.
And thank you for the services to the community when you were in the cops, because I know we all make sacrifices, and I'm sure you were making some big sacrifices over the years.
And our journey is not over.
Exactly. Enjoy yourself. Good luck
Thanks,
in
mate.
the rodeo. Good luck in your shooting and everything else that you're doing.
Yep. Cheers, mate.
Gotta love WA. See ya. Bye bye.
See ya.